It is the fourth model introduced in the ZOIDS New Century collaboration with Meteorot S, and the second introduced in the 2026 run of the collaboration. This is ZSZ03, Liger ZP. With an all-new kit of missile cannon, range missile, range napalm, biped legs, and the leg ability of bomber, which buffs power relative to the leg's combined resist stats when using gunpowder skills. Now, much like Liger Schneider made it obviously apparent that CG reliance and optic attribute was the big DPS for him, Liger Panzer, on the other hand, makes it abundantly clear that anything that goes boom and smells like gunpowder will be his flavor of choice, with 3 new gunpowder skills being introduced into the game, and when I say new, I mean completely new. No weird skills, no offshoots of others, completely brand new skills that Liger Panzer is bringing to this game with his release in Meteorot S. Missile Cannon on the head part is a brand new gunpowder shooting skill that basically serves as like a shooty gunpowder version of Drill from the Gurren Lagann collaboration. Basically, it deals an extra 50% damage bonus when piercing upon breaking something, and ignores defense on top of that, making it abundantly powerful right from turn 1, and with a base power of over 2500, that's going to be immensely painful if it does end up actually breaking anything. However, it does not come without its penalties though, and that penalty is the fact that it inflicts the user with 2 stacks of a fire DOT symptom. So much like say Flame Will or Double Fire or something similar, this one basically will overload the user and set up as a DOT penalty for overloading on the gunpowder emphasis and essentially going all in with the explosions. It does have some fairly solid specs though at high 600s for both heating and cooling though, so being able to move fairly quickly and use this without anything outrunning you really shouldn't be too much of a problem. Range Missile on the right arm is another brand new gunpowder skill being introduced in the game, which much like say Range Pile or Range Sword where it has different conditions relative to user's distance, now gunpowder gets added into that mix as well. Range Missile gets 2 different conditions relative to the distance, relative to the proximity of the target from Liger Panzer. If the target is closer to Liger Panzer, Range Missile gets a damage plus and a piercing effect in close range. However, if the target is far away from Liger Panzer, you instead get Success plus and it turns into a scatter effect, which will damage 1 part normally and then 2 others randomly for extra damage. And then as an added bonus, regardless of whether it's at close range or long, you also get a 30% damage bonus on piercing. So pretty much like with Missile Cannon, just for breaking something, have a little bit extra just because you did so. Range Napalm, on the other hand, is more or less the reverse of Range Missile, but with an extra added perk on top of it. It is also another gunpowder skill, but has different conditions relative to target's proximity. The closer the target, it gets Power Plus and Scatter, much like a basic Napalm attack, which will damage 1 part normally and then 2 others randomly, like I said, and then at close range like a regular Napalm attack. If the target is far away from Liger Panzer, you instead get Success Plus and Piercing. So again, basically just an inverse of Range Missile, which will make Liger Panzer very user-friendly at either close range or long range, no matter which way you choose to use him. The added bonus to Range Napalm, though, is the fact that it always lands a critical hit. So much like, say, with Cross Shock or with Hurricane from Van Kerbat fairly recently, this one's going to be your high-end DPS type of hit, most likely with the inability to dodge or defend while in your cooldown. But with slightly lower heating and cooling and the mid-600s, that's really not all that terrible either. So it is a kind of a fairly decent risk/reward assessment based on how you choose to use them. Biped legs means that Liger Panzer will have fairly solid coverage across most terrains and fairly decent terrain compatibility as well, and its leg stats are honestly pretty solid as well. A base mobility of 858 is a very solid starting number where you want to sit at with your base speed, An evade of 975 isn't too shabby. He'll dodge or graze essentially as he feels like it, if he's not slapped with a no dodge or a no defend penalty. And his resist stats are actually fairly nice as well and bulky compared to most other Ligers. With a melee resist of 1349 and a shoot resist of 1678, he's definitely much bulkier in the arm department, which means he can take hits much better than most other Ligers can. And given that Bomber will scale bonus gunpowder-based damage relative to the combined of these two, the higher these specs go, the more damage Liger Panzer ends up dealing. He is also much tankier than Liger Schneider as well, with a base head armor of over 4600, arms at just over 4200 apiece, and legs at 4379, so he's not only bulky, but he's also very healthy as well in that department. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Liger Panzer a very solid 7 out of 10 across the board. If you're looking for a very solid gunpowder-based DPS, you really don't have to look too much farther than Liger Panzer, because he will suit all of your needs at long range or close range and perform very consistently no matter how you choose to use him or where you use him. Just a couple things to keep in mind though. The first of which is the fact that he is a triple heavy, which means anyone that with a gravity attribute skill will absolutely nuke him into next week before he has the chance to really set anything off. But it's also worth noting that because he's triple gunpowder, much like Liger Schneider is with triple optic, anyone that is using a proportionate defense-oriented skill, such as, say, Gunpowder Guard or All Attribute Guard, will render him completely and 100% harmless. So this is just something to keep in mind as well. One other thing to note is the 2 stacks of Fire DOT that Liger Panzer will inflict on himself. Now, normally this isn't too big of a problem with just one, but given the fact that both those stacks build on top of each other, means the longer that you have it, the more HP you lose, and you will absolutely notice it. But if you have stat cleanse on the team, this becomes a non-issue. As mixed parts though, I do have to rate him equally at a 7 out of 10 for these same reasons. Unlike Liger Schneider, which requires a little bit of setup in order to use, Liger Panzer you can use basically anywhere. You can use him as a pure set right out of the box with no need to build him up or set up a team around him, or you can mix up the parts with any other gunpowder-oriented DPS you try to use. So you could use ranged missile and ranged napalm basically anywhere, missile cannon, and of course bomber is also very good for basically any other kind of DPS gunpowder-oriented skill that you choose to use.